While I was at work, my parents shifted my kids' belongings to the basement, insisting, "Our other grandson deserves the best rooms." When I got home and saw my kids crying, I just smiled and said, "Pack your bags." My parents had no idea what was coming. Hi, I'm Amanda, I'm 35, and I'm a mom to the two most incredible 10-year-old twins, Jack and Emma. 2 years ago, after a devastating divorce, we moved in with my parents. It felt like a lifeline then. As a pediatric nurse, working grueling 12-hour shifts, sometimes overnight, I desperately needed help, and they offered their home. Our relationship had always been complicated, to put it mildly, but I tried to make it work. I really did. I convinced myself that this was temporary, a bridge to a better future for my children. But then my brother, Stephen, and his wife Melissa, had their baby boy, little Ethan, and suddenly, my kids became utterly invisible. I never, in my wildest dreams, imagined my own parents would betray us so completely, would hurt my children with such casual disregard. My divorce from David, after 12 years of marriage, had blindsided me. Emotionally, I was shattered. Financially, I was adrift. We'd built our entire life around his income as a software engineer, while I'd worked part-time as a nurse, fitting my schedule around raising our twins. Suddenly, I was facing shared custody, minimal alimony, and the terrifying need to work full-time just to keep our heads above water. That's when my parents, Martha and Richard, stepped in. "Just until you get back on your feet," my father had said, patting my shoulder, his voice laced with an uneasy mix of pity and obligation. I was grateful, truly. Despite our fractured history, growing up, I was always the responsible one, the one who followed the rules and exceeded expectations. Stephen, my younger brother, was the golden child, capable of doing no wrong. I'd spent 8 arduous years putting myself through nursing school, specializing in pediatrics because I adored working with children. My path wasn't flashy, but it was steady, honorable. Stephen, meanwhile, had dropped out of college, started a tech business that my parents enthusiastically funded, and by 32, he was making 6 figures. The pattern of favoritism was so deeply ingrained, so utterly normalized, that for years, I barely even noticed it anymore. Jack, my creative soul, was always drawing or building, with a sensitivity that sometimes made the world a harsh place for him. Emma, my little athlete, was outspoken and confident, always the first to champion fairness. They were both brilliant, thriving in school despite the chaos of the divorce and our move. Our initial arrangement at my parents' house had seemed positive. They converted their home office into a bedroom for the twins, and I took the guest room. I contributed to groceries, cooked most meals, and ensured my kids were respectful of their grandparents' space and routines. With my 12-hour shifts, sometimes overnight, my parents helped with school drop-offs and pickups. My plan was simple: save enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on our own place within a year. I was meticulous with money, taking every extra shift, squirreling away every dollar. The housing market was brutal, but I was fiercely determined to give my children back their stability. And then Stephen and Melissa announced they were having a baby, little Ethan. And everything, absolutely everything, changed. My parents had always favored Stephen, but their reaction to his son was a whole new level of devotion. They transformed their formal dining room into a lavish nursery, even though Stephen and Melissa had their own 4-bedroom house across town. They bought expensive baby equipment that would only be used during visits. My mother began canceling plans to help with my kids, claiming, "Your brother needs more support right now. He's new to parenting." The profound irony that I had been a single parent for 2 years, navigating it all alone, somehow completely escaped her. At first, I tried to be understanding. New babies are exciting, and this was their first grandson. Jack and Emma had been their only grandchildren for a decade, so perhaps they were just enjoying the novelty. I encouraged my kids to be patient, explaining that little Ethan needed extra attention. But the favoritism, at first subtle, quickly escalated. Christmas gifts for Ethan were noticeably more expensive. Comments about how Ethan looked just like Stephen as a baby, while Jack and Emma had always been told they resembled their father more than me. Small things, yes, but they accumulated, 1,000 tiny cuts eroding our sense of belonging. Pause, slightly more direct to camera. By the way, if you're still with me on this wild ride, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories about navigating family drama are coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. Back to narrative. I tried to compensate by creating special time just for us. We'd go to the park on my days off or have movie nights in my cramped bedroom. I started a savings chart on my bathroom wall where the kids could see our progress toward getting our own place. Just a few more months, I'd promised them. We'll have our own home by Christmas. But as spring turned to summer, the tension in the house became unbearable. My parents became increasingly critical of my parenting decisions, from what I fed the twins to their bedtimes to their screen time. Meanwhile, Stephen and Melissa could do no wrong with Ethan, even when they'd show up hours late for family dinner or cancel plans last minute. I was walking a tightrope, trying desperately to shield my children from the blatant reality that their grandparents were treating them differently, while also trying to maintain some semblance of peace. I needed my parents' help. I couldn't afford childcare on top of saving for our move. By the end of summer, my savings account was growing steadily. I had calculated that by November, I would have enough for a modest 2-bedroom apartment. Just 3 more months of patience, I told myself. 3 more months of biting my tongue and reminding my children that we were guests in their grandparents' home. 3 more months of watching my parents dote on Ethan while barely acknowledging Jack and Emma's achievements. I had no idea how much worse things would get before those 3 months were up. The situation escalated dramatically in September. Stephen called a family meeting. He and Melissa sat at my parents' kitchen table, baby Ethan dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than my entire weekly grocery budget. "We've got some exciting news," Stephen announced, looking at my parents, not me. "We're finally doing that major renovation on our house, the one we've been talking about for ages." My mother clasped her hands together, beaming. "That's wonderful, sweetie." Melissa continued, bouncing Ethan on her knee. "The thing is, we'll need somewhere to stay during the construction. It should only be about 6 to 8 weeks. Before I could even process the words, my father was nodding enthusiastically. "You'll stay here, of course. We have plenty of room." I cleared my throat, my voice barely a whisper. "Actually, we're a bit tight on space already with the 5 of us." I gestured to myself, the twins, and my parents. My mother shot me a look, sharp and dismissive. "Family helps family, Amanda. It's only temporary." And just like that, the decision was made. No one asked how I felt. No one considered what this would mean for Jack and Emma. No one acknowledged that I had been told the exact same thing about our temporary stay, which was now approaching the 2-year mark. Stephen and Melissa moved in the following weekend. My father, who had never once offered to help assemble the twins' beds when we moved in, helped them set up a portable crib for Ethan. My mother cleared out an entire closet for Melissa's clothes, while my own belongings had remained in suitcases for months before I eventually bought a small dresser for myself. The changes were immediate and jarring. Suddenly, Jack and Emma were constantly told to keep their voices down, because Ethan is napping. Their toys, which had been limited to their bedroom and a small corner of the living room, were now considered clutter and repeatedly put away in boxes. The television, which they had been allowed to watch for an hour after school, was now perpetually tuned to Melissa's preferred shows. One evening, I came home from a long shift to find Emma sitting alone on the back porch, tears silently streaming down her face. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, my heart aching as I sat beside her. "Grandma said I was being too loud with my jump rope in the backyard," she sniffled. But Ethan wasn't even sleeping. He was in the living room with Aunt Melissa. She just didn't want to hear me counting my jumps. That same week, Jack came home from school, absolutely buzzing with excitement about an art project he'd been working on. He'd been selected to represent his class in a district-wide exhibition, a huge achievement for my sensitive boy. When he tried to show my mother, she waved him away, barely looking up. "Not now, Jack. I'm helping Melissa pick out new curtains for their house." I watched my son's face fall, his excitement replaced by a crushing disappointment, and something cold and hard settled inside me. That night, after the kids were asleep, I tried to have the conversation with my parents. "I understand that Stephen and his family need help right now," I began carefully, "but I'm concerned about how Jack and Emma are being treated. They feel like they're not important anymore." My father frowned. They're being oversensitive. Kids need to learn that babies require more attention. Ethan isn't even here most of the day, I pointed out, my voice trembling slightly. Stephen takes him to daycare, and Melissa picks him up. Jack and Emma aren't asking for attention during those hours. My mother sighed dramatically. You always were jealous of your brother, Amanda. I thought you would have outgrown that by now. I was stunned into silence. Was that really how they saw me? As a jealous sibling rather than a concerned, protective mother? The very idea was a knife to the gut. The situations continued to worsen. Melissa began rearranging items in the kitchen without asking, complaining about the healthy snacks I bought for the twins, and leaving her laundry in the machine for days. Stephen acted as if he owned the house, inviting friends over for watch parties without bothering to check if anyone else had plans for the living room. One evening, I overheard Stephen and my father discussing financial matters. We might need to extend the renovation timeline, Stephen was saying. The contractor found some issues with the foundation. Stay as long as you need, my father replied, his voice warm and inviting. This is your home too. I thought about how I had never been told that, despite contributing to household expenses and doing most of the cooking and cleaning. Instead, I was regularly reminded that our help was temporary and conditional. The double standard was a bitter pill. The true breaking point came during a Sunday dinner in early October. My mother had prepared all of Stephen's favorite foods, none of which my children particularly enjoyed. When Jack politely asked if there was anything else he could eat, my mother's eyes narrowed. You're being ungrateful, Jack, she said sternly. When I was growing up, we ate what was put in front of us. Later in the meal, Ethan threw his entire plate on the floor, food splattering everywhere. Everyone laughed indulgently. He's just exploring his world, Melissa explained, making no move to clean up the mess. The blatant double standard was so obvious that even my usually diplomatic son noticed. How come Ethan can throw food, but I can't ask for a sandwich? He whispered to me, his small face etched with confusion and hurt. I had no good answer for him. That week, I found that someone had removed Jack and Emma's artwork from the refrigerator to make room for a printout of Ethan's daycare schedule. When I asked about it, Melissa shrugged. I needed the information front and center, and I didn't think anyone would mind if I rearranged a few things. My twins stopped wanting to spend time in the common areas of the house. They retreated to their small, shared bedroom, the only place they had some semblance of control over their environment. I started taking them to the public library after school when I wasn't working, just to give them a space where they weren't constantly shushed or criticized. A co-worker, Nancy, noticed my stress during a particularly difficult shift. Everything okay at home, Amanda? She asked gently as we charted together. I found myself pouring out the entire miserable situation. Nancy listened sympathetically before saying something that hit me like a revelation, something that stuck with me long after our shift ended. It sounds like your parents have created a household where your brother's family is treated as guests of honor, while you and your children are treated as inconvenient roommates. That is not a healthy environment for any of you. She was right, and hearing it said out loud, by someone else, made me realize how utterly normalized this dysfunctional dynamic had become for me. That evening, instead of going straight home, I drove around the neighborhood, my mind racing. I called a realtor friend of mine. I need to get my kids out of this situation, I told her, my voice thick with a newfound resolve. Sooner rather than later. By mid-October, the situation at home had deteriorated beyond what I thought possible. Stephen and Melissa had fully taken over the house, with my parents' enthusiastic support. Their renovation, originally scheduled for 6 to 8 weeks, had now been extended indefinitely, due to complications that Stephen was vague about whenever I asked. I came home one day to find that my parents had purchased a special high chair for Ethan, one that cost nearly $400, according to the box I found in the recycling. This, while they had complained bitterly about the cost of Jack's asthma medication the previous week, which my insurance only partially covered. We want Ethan to be comfortable when he eats here, my mother explained when I questioned the expense. Jack needs to breathe, I responded, unable to keep the raw edge from my voice. My mother looked at me as if I was being utterly unreasonable. Your father and I are on a fixed income, Amanda. We cannot be expected to cover everything for your children. The fact that I paid for all of my children's expenses, plus contributed to household bills, apparently did not register with her. Neither did the fact that Stephen and Melissa, both high earners, contributed absolutely nothing toward household expenses during their extended stay. The next incident involved Emma's clarinet. She had been practicing for less than 15 minutes for band class when Melissa stormed in. "Can you not do that right now? Ethan is trying to nap, and I have an important call in 10 minutes. Emma apologized, her face crumbling, and put her instrument away. Later, she tearfully told me she had been practicing at the exact time her band teacher had scheduled for their virtual practice session. She had now missed it, and would be unprepared for her upcoming evaluation. I tried to speak with Melissa, suggesting we could work out a schedule that accommodated everyone. My work calls and Ethan's sleep schedule have to take priority, she responded dismissively. Emma can practice her little hobby anytime. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood, desperate not to say something I would instantly regret. Emma's little hobby was something she was passionate about, and her band teacher had noted she had real talent. But in this house, anything my children did was considered less important than the most trivial needs of Stephen's family. Jack was struggling too. His teacher emailed me, concerned about his withdrawal in class and declining grades. My sociable, enthusiastic son had become quiet and anxious. When I asked him about it, he admitted he was having trouble sleeping because he was worried about doing anything wrong at home. "Grandma and Grandpa get mad at us for everything," he explained, his voice small and defeated. "But they never get mad at Ethan or Uncle Stephen or Aunt Melissa." My heart broke for him. I took on even more extra shifts at the hospital, partly to earn more money for our escape, and partly just to avoid the suffocating tension at home. My parents interpreted this as me shirking family responsibilities, while Stephen and Melissa seemed glad to have me out of the way. The situation came to an ugly head during a family dinner in late October. My parents had invited several extended family members over, including my Aunt Susan, who had always been kind to me and my children. During the meal, my mother launched into an extended monologue about how gifted Ethan was. How at just 9 months he was clearly advanced for his age. "He's trying to stand already," she boasted. "Stephen was an early walker too. Some children just have that natural athletic ability." She then turned to Jack, a cruel smile on her face. "It's too bad you didn't get that from your father's side. David was always athletic, wasn't he?" I saw Jack's face crumple before he carefully composed himself, his eyes downcast. The implication was clear. Any positive traits my children possessed came from their father, or were despite my influence, while Ethan's gifts were clearly inherited from the superior genetic line of my brother. Aunt Susan caught my eye across the table, her expression filled with concern. After dinner, she pulled me aside. "How long has it been like this?" she asked quietly. "It's always been this way to some degree," I admitted, tears pricking my eyes, "but it's gotten much, much worse since Stephen's family moved in." "This is not healthy for your children, Amanda," she said, her voice firm, echoing Nancy's words. "They deserve better than to be treated as second-class members of their own family." I nodded, tears finally spilling over. "I'm working on it," I assured her. "I have a plan." And I did. In the weeks since my conversation with Nancy, I had been meeting with my realtor friend during my lunch breaks, squeezing in showings between shifts. We had looked at several rental properties, and I had found a small 3-bedroom house, just 10 minutes from the hospital and miraculously, in the same school district as the twins currently attended. The rent was at the upper limit of what I could afford, but I had been approved based on my steady employment history and excellent credit score. I had signed the lease the previous week, but told no one. Not even Jack and Emma. I didn't want to get their hopes up until everything was finalized. The house would be available for move-in on November 1st, just a week away. I had been secretly ordering essential furniture to be delivered on that date, and had set up utilities in my name. My aunt squeezed my hand. "Let me know if you need anything," she said. "I've been concerned about this situation for some time." Her unwavering support meant more than she could ever know. I had begun to question my own perceptions, wondering if I was being oversensitive or jealous as my parents suggested. Having outside confirmation that the situation was as bad as I thought it was gave me the final, necessary push of confidence. The next morning, I overheard Stephen and my father discussing more permanent arrangements. The contractor says it could be another 3 months, Stephen was saying. And honestly, with the baby, it might make more sense to just stay through the holidays. You know you're always welcome, my father replied warmly. This is your home. I wondered if either of them remembered that I had been told my stay was temporary, that I was expected to find my own place as quickly as possible. The double standard was so glaring it would have been laughable if it wasn't systematically breaking my children's hearts. That evening, I took the twins out for ice cream after dinner, something we rarely did on weeknights. I desperately needed some time alone with them, away from the suffocating atmosphere of the house. I need you both to know something important, I told them as they enjoyed their treats, their eyes wide and trusting. No matter what Grandma and Grandpa say or do, you two are amazing, valuable people. The way they are treating you is not because of anything you have done wrong. Emma, always perceptive, studied my face. Are we going to move out soon? I was surprised by her insight. What makes you ask that, honey? You've been working a lot more shifts, she said. And you seem different lately, less sad and more determined. Out of the mouths of babes. My daughter had seen the change in me before I had fully acknowledged it myself. Just keep being your wonderful selves for a little bit longer. I told them, not quite ready to reveal my plan. Can you do that for me? They both nodded, and I saw a flicker of hope in their eyes that had been missing for far too long. When we returned home, Melissa was complaining loudly about the twins' backpacks being in the hallway, despite the fact that Ethan's stroller, diaper bag, and various toys were scattered throughout the common areas of the house. Children need to learn to pick up after themselves, she lectured me, as if she was the parenting expert and I was a novice. I smiled tightly and helped the kids move their belongings, reminding myself that we only had to endure this for a few more days. I had no idea that the situation was about to explode in a way that would force my hand even sooner than I had planned. The following Tuesday, I was scheduled for a 12-hour shift at the hospital. It was a particularly busy day in the pediatric ward, with 3 new admissions and a staff shortage that had me covering more patients than usual. I barely had time to check my phone during my short lunch break, but when I did, I saw several missed texts. From Jack. Mom, something weird is happening. Grandpa and Uncle Stephen are moving our stuff. From Emma. Grandma says we have to move to the basement. This is not fair. From Jack again. Mom, please come home. They took all our things downstairs. And from Emma. The message that truly shattered my composure. I hate it here. The basement is cold and gross and there are spiders. My heart pounded a furious drum against my ribs as I quickly called home. No answer. I tried both children's phones. Nothing. Finally, I texted Emma. I will be home as soon as I can. Stay calm. I love you both. I spoke with my supervisor, explaining the family emergency. She was understanding and arranged coverage for my remaining 4 hours. Even so, it took me another agonizing hour to hand off my patients and complete critical documentation before I could leave. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Had my parents really moved my children to the basement? The unfinished, poorly insulated basement that had occasional water seepage when it rained heavily? When I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm myself before going inside. I needed to assess the situation clearly before reacting. The scene that greeted me inside the house confirmed my worst fears. Jack and Emma sat huddled together on the living room couch, both with red-rimmed eyes, their small bodies radiating a palpable sadness. My mother was in the kitchen with Melissa, both sipping tea, utterly oblivious, as if nothing unusual had happened. Stephen and my father were nowhere to be seen. What is going on? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, going straight to my children. Emma jumped up and threw her arms around me, burying her face in my side. They moved all our stuff to the basement without asking, she wailed. They said we don't deserve the good rooms upstairs. Jack nodded miserably. Grandpa said, Uncle Stephen's family needs more space because they are more important right now. I hugged them both tightly, my anger a cold, hard knot in my stomach, but keeping my voice calm for their sake. Let me talk to Grandma and see what's happening. In the kitchen, my mother barely looked up when I entered. You're home early, she observed, her tone flat. Why are my children's belongings in the basement? I asked directly, cutting through the pleasantries. Melissa sipped her tea, her gaze unwavering. We needed to make some adjustments to the living arrangements. Stephen and I need a nursery for Ethan, plus space for my home office now that my company has gone remote. So you decided to move Jack and Emma to the unfinished basement without discussing it with me first? My voice was deadly quiet, each word a controlled explosion. My mother finally met my eyes, a flicker of defensiveness there. It was the logical solution, Amanda. The children are older and can adapt more easily than a baby. Besides, and this is where her words twisted the knife, our other grandson deserves the best rooms. He's here all day while your children are at school. The casual cruelty of her statement took my breath away. My children deserve a safe, comfortable space just as much as Ethan does. Don't be so dramatic, Amanda, my mother dismissed, waving her hand. The basement is perfectly fine. We put their beds down there, and everything. The basement has mold in one corner, gets freezing cold at night, and the ceiling is unfinished, I pointed out, my voice rising. Not to mention, there's only one small window that doesn't even open properly. They'll manage, my mother said with finality. Family means making sacrifices. Apparently, in her mind, family only meant my children should sacrifice, never Stephen's. At that moment, my father and brother came in through the back door, oblivious, a bag of fast food in Stephen's hand. Oh, good, you're home, my father said when he saw me. We've made some changes that we need to discuss. Yes, I can see that, I replied, fighting to keep my tone level. You moved my children's belongings to the basement without my permission. Stephen shrugged, a dismissive flick of his wrist. We need the space upstairs. Ethan is getting more mobile and needs room to develop properly. Plus, Melissa needs a quiet space for her work calls. And my children need a safe, appropriate bedroom, I countered, my voice laced with venom. The basement is fine, my father said, waving his hand dismissively. I put in some extra lights and laid down some old carpet scraps. They should be grateful they have a place to stay at all. I stared at him, truly seeing him for the first time. This man who had raised me, who I had spent years trying to please, had just revealed exactly how little he valued me and my children. Jack has asthma, I reminded them, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. The basement is damp and has visible mold. It could trigger a serious attack. You're overreacting as usual, Stephen said with an eye roll. Kids are resilient. Melissa and I grew up in much worse conditions, didn't we, honey? Melissa nodded in agreement, though I happened to know she had grown up in a 5-bedroom house in an affluent suburb. I looked around at the 4 adults who had made this decision. None of them showed a hint of remorse or understanding. To them, this was perfectly reasonable. The golden child's family deserved the best, while my children deserved whatever scraps were left over. I walked back to the living room where Jack and Emma waited anxiously. They looked up at me with such trust, such hope that I would fix this situation, that I would make it right. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a calm, unwavering certainty about what needed to happen next. I smiled at them, a genuine, unshakable smile despite the circumstances, and said 3 words that would change everything. Pack your bags. They looked confused, their little faces a mix of fear and disbelief, but I just nodded encouragingly. Trust me, I said, my voice firm and clear. Pack everything important to you. We'll get the rest later. My father had followed me into the living room and overheard. Oh, for heaven's sake, Amanda, stop being so dramatic. No one is asking you to leave. I turned to him, still smiling. No, Dad. You just made it abundantly clear where my children and I stand in this family, and we deserve better. What are you talking about? My father sputtered, his face turning an alarming shade of red, as Jack and Emma looked between us with wide eyes. Go on, kids, I said gently, guiding them towards the stairs. Go pack your backpacks with your most important things. We'll come back for the rest tomorrow. As they hurried upstairs, my mother entered the living room, drawn by the rising tension. What nonsense is this now? You can't just leave because things didn't go your way. Stephen and Melissa followed, Ethan perched on Stephen's hip. The gang was all here for the showdown, it seemed. This is not about things not going my way, I explained calmly, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. This is about basic respect and consideration, which has been sorely lacking in this household. We've given you a roof over your head for nearly 2 years, my father exclaimed, his voice incredulous. How dare you talk about lack of consideration? Yes, you have, I acknowledged, and I have been grateful. I have also contributed financially, done most of the cooking and cleaning, and made sure my children respected your rules and space. But today you crossed a line. Melissa scoffed, a sneer twisting her lips. It's just a bedroom rearrangement. You're being ridiculously oversensitive. I turned to her, my gaze unwavering. Is that what you would call it if someone moved your child to an unsuitable space without consulting you first? She had no answer for that. The basement is perfectly adequate, my mother insisted, regaining her footing. We raised you and Stephen without all these special accommodations kids seem to need nowadays. The basement has mold, I repeated, my voice rising. Jack has asthma. It's also cold, damp, and has inadequate emergency exits. It is not a legal bedroom by any housing code standard. My father waved his hand dismissively. Those codes are just government overreach. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Safety regulations were now government overreach, when they inconvenienced him. But I suspected he would feel differently if he was the one being relegated to substandard accommodations. Where exactly do you think you're going to go? Stephen asked with a smirk, a condescending edge to his voice. It's not like you've been saving much, what with your spending habits. And there it was. The fundamental misunderstanding they all shared. They saw me as financially dependent and irresponsible, despite all evidence to the contrary. They truly believed I had no options, no agency, no ability to stand on my own. That is where you are wrong, I said quietly, the satisfaction of my secret bubbling just beneath the surface. I have been saving since the day I moved in here. I have been working extra shifts and building my emergency fund, and 3 weeks ago, I signed a lease on a house not far from here. The stunned silence that followed was deeply, profoundly satisfying. My mother recovered first, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. You were planning to leave without telling us? I was planning to give you proper notice next week, I clarified, my voice unwavering. The house is not available until November 1st, but today's events have accelerated my timeline. You can't be serious. Stephen blurted out. Where are you going to stay until then? That is no longer any of your concern, I replied, my gaze hardening. In truth, I had already spoken with Nancy from work, who had, without hesitation, offered her guest room for a few days if needed. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us? By sneaking around behind our backs, and then storming out over a minor disagreement. Minor disagreement? I repeated, incredulous. You moved my children's belongings to an unsafe space without my knowledge or consent. You told them to their faces that they do not deserve the same comfort and consideration as their cousin. That is not minor, Dad. That is a fundamental statement about how you value them and me. Emma and Jack came back downstairs, each with a backpack and a small bag. Emma was clutching her clarinet case, and Jack had his favorite drawing supplies and the stuffed dragon he had slept with since he was 3. We're ready, Mom, Emma said, her voice stronger than I had heard it in weeks. This is ridiculous, my mother declared, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. You cannot seriously be leaving right now. We are, I confirmed, my voice calm and resolute. We will come back tomorrow to get the rest of our things when everyone has had a chance to calm down. If you walk out that door, my father threatened, his voice laced with venom, do not expect to be welcomed back with open arms. I looked at him sadly, a profound weariness washing over me. I stopped expecting that a long time ago, Dad. Stephen stepped forward, suddenly realizing this was actually happening. Come on, sis. Let's talk about this rationally. There's no need to make a scene in front of the kids. My children have already been shown exactly where they stand in this family's hierarchy. I responded, my voice firm. There is nothing more to discuss tonight. I helped Jack and Emma put their bags in the car while my family watched from the porch, their expressions ranging from anger to disbelief. They had been so certain of their power over me, so confident in my dependence, that they could not process the reality of my departure. As I started the car, my mother rushed over to my window. Amanda, please, you're overreacting. Come back inside and we'll figure something out. We'll talk tomorrow, I said firmly, when I come to get our things. But where will you go? She asked, a sliver of genuine concern finally breaking through her indignation. Somewhere where my children are valued, I answered simply and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see Jack and Emma looking back at the house that had been our home for nearly 2 years. Not with sadness, I realized, but with a profound, quiet relief. Are we really moving to our own house? Jack asked cautiously, his voice small. Almost, I told him, a warm feeling spreading through my chest. We have a house waiting for us, but we can't move in until next week. Tonight, we're going to stay with my friend Nancy from work. Is it because of what Grandpa and Grandma did? Emma asked, ever direct. I chose my words carefully. It is because we deserve to live somewhere where everyone is treated with respect and kindness. I've been planning for us to move out for a while now. But yes, what happened today made me realize we needed to leave sooner. I didn't like how they talked about us, Jack said quietly, his brow furrowed. Like we weren't important. My heart broke a little at his words. You are both incredibly important, I assured them, reaching back to squeeze their hands. And anyone who cannot see that does not deserve to have you in their lives. When we arrived at Nancy's house, she welcomed us warmly, having already prepared her guest room with an air mattress for the kids alongside the queen bed I would use. She had even bought ice cream and rented a movie for us to watch together. As the twins settled in, picking at their ice cream with subdued enthusiasm, Nancy pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, she said simply. It takes courage to set boundaries with family, especially when it's your parents. I just wish I had done it sooner, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion, before they hurt my kids like this. You're doing it now, she pointed out, a gentle hand on my arm. And that is what matters. That night, as Jack and Emma slept soundly beside me in the unfamiliar room, I felt a strange, profound mixture of emotions. There was sadness for what should have been, anger at how we had been treated, and a lingering anxiety about the unknown future. But underneath it all, a powerful, quiet sense of peace. For the first time in years, I had stood up for myself and my children without wavering or second-guessing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Retrieving our belongings, weathering the inevitable emotional manipulation, finalizing arrangements for our new home. But tonight, watching my children sleep peacefully, their faces finally relaxed, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right decision. We were finally, truly breaking free. Transition to a shot of Amanda in her new, cozy home, perhaps smiling gently. 6 months after our abrupt departure from my parents' home, our lives had transformed in ways I could scarcely have imagined. Our small rental house had become a true home, filled with laughter, Jack's artwork proudly displayed on the refrigerator, and the comfortable, happy chaos of family life. Jack and Emma had blossomed, their confidence returning as they settled into an environment where they were consistently valued and respected. My promotion to charge nurse on the pediatric floor had come with not only a better schedule and increased salary, but also new responsibilities that challenged and fulfilled me professionally. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was thriving, rather than just surviving. Our relationship with my parents had evolved into something cautiously cordial. The Sunday dinners had become a monthly tradition, with clear boundaries established and, for the most part, respected. My mother had slowly, painstakingly, begun to acknowledge the favoritism that had pervaded our family dynamics, though my father still struggled to fully see his role in what had happened. I've been thinking a lot about last fall, my mother said during one of her visits to our home. She had started coming by occasionally on her own, without my father, a small but significant shift. I didn't realize how much we were hurting Jack and Emma. What made you see it? I asked, genuinely curious about her evolution. She sighed, looking older than her years. After you left, nothing was the same. Stephen and Melissa stayed for another month, But without you there, I was overwhelmed trying to maintain the house and help with Ethan. I started to realize how much you had been doing, how much I had taken you for granted. It was the closest thing to an apology I had received, and I accepted it as such. And then, she continued, Stephen and Melissa started arguing all the time, about childcare, about the renovation that never seemed to end, about money. They moved back to their house before Christmas, even though the work wasn't finished. I wasn't surprised. Stephen and Melissa had always presented a united front in public, but I had glimpsed cracks in their relationship. Without the buffer of my parents' constant approval and my practical support, those cracks had apparently widened. How are they doing now? I asked, more out of politeness than genuine concern. They're in couples counseling, my mother admitted. Your father thinks it's nonsense, but I think it might help them. Melissa went back to work full-time, and they're struggling with the childcare arrangements. I nodded, feeling a twinge of sympathy despite everything. Parenting was challenging under the best circumstances, and their relationship had never seemed built on the strongest foundation. The most significant change, however, was in my children. Jack's anxiety had all but disappeared, and his natural creativity had re-emerged. He had joined an after-school art program, and was thriving under the mentorship of a patient teacher who recognized his talent. Emma had made the advanced band at school, and was talking about trying out for the soccer team in the spring. One evening, as we sat together working on a puzzle, a quiet family ritual we had established in our new home, Emma approached the subject of her grandparents. Mom, why do you think Grandma and Grandpa treated us differently than Ethan? She asked carefully, fitting a piece into place. I considered my response carefully. I think people sometimes have fixed ideas about others that make it hard for them to see clearly. Grandma and Grandpa always saw Uncle Stephen as special and deserving of extra attention. When he had Ethan, they transferred those feelings to him. But we're their grandchildren too, Jack pointed out, his voice a little bewildered. Yes, you are, I agreed. And they do love you. They just didn't know how to show it equally or fairly. Is that why we left? Emma asked, her eyes searching mine. Because they weren't fair? We left because everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness, I explained. When that wasn't happening, we needed to create our own space where we could all thrive. Jack nodded thoughtfully. I like it better here anyway. At Grandma and Grandpa's house, I always felt like I was in the way. You are never in the way here, I assured him, pulling him into a hug. This is your home, and you belong here exactly as you are. The conversation shifted to other topics, but I was struck by how maturely they were processing what had happened. Children were remarkably resilient when given safety, consistency, and honest communication. In April, an unexpected opportunity arose. A small 3-bedroom house in our neighborhood went up for sale, priced just within my reach thanks to my promotion and careful saving. After consulting with a mortgage broker and reviewing my finances, I made an offer. To my surprise and delight, it was accepted. Becoming a homeowner had been a distant dream when we left my parents' house, something I hoped for in the nebulous future. Now, less than a year later, it was becoming reality. The house needed some cosmetic updates, but it was structurally sound and in a fantastic location. Most importantly, it would be ours. When I shared the news with the twins, their excitement was contagious. They immediately began planning how they would decorate their rooms, what color we should paint the front door, where we would plant a garden in the small backyard. Can we get a dog once we move in? Jack asked hopefully. We'll see, I replied, not ready to commit, but warming to the idea. A dog would complete our little family in many ways. The process of buying the house brought my father back into our lives in an unexpected way. Despite our still strained relationship, he had experience with home buying and offered to look over the inspection report with me. The roof has at least 5 years left, he said as we sat at my kitchen table reviewing the documents. But you'll want to budget for replacing the water heater sooner rather than later. His practical advice was genuinely helpful, and I appreciated that he was making an effort to support me without controlling or criticizing my decisions. It was a small but significant shift in our dynamic. I'm proud of you, Amanda, he said unexpectedly as he was leaving, his gaze softening. Buying a house on your own is no small accomplishment. The words I had longed to hear for most of my life caught me completely off guard. Thank you, Dad. I managed to reply, my throat tight. I know I haven't always been fair, he continued haltingly. Your mother and I have been talking a lot about how we handled things. I can't change the past, but I would like to do better going forward. It wasn't a full apology, but coming from my proud, stubborn father, it was monumental. I would like that too, I told him honestly. The day we closed on the house, Jack and Emma were in school. I signed the papers alone, but took a photo of the keys to show them when they got home. As I stood in the empty living room of our new house, my house, I felt a surge of emotions so powerful it brought tears to my eyes. 2 years ago, I had been a newly divorced mother, uncertain about my future and dependent on my parents' conditional support. Now I was a homeowner, advancing in my career, and most importantly, providing my children with the stable, loving home they deserved. The journey had been painful at times, forcing me to confront hard truths about my family and myself. I had to learn that setting boundaries was not selfish but necessary. That standing up for my children meant sometimes walking away from toxic situations. And that my worth was not determined by others' perceptions, especially those who were supposed to love me unconditionally. We moved into our new home on a sunny Saturday in May, with help from friends, colleagues, and yes, even my parents. The atmosphere was celebratory as we arranged furniture, unpacked boxes, and ordered pizza for everyone who had helped. By evening, when only my parents remained, we sat together on my new back porch, watching Jack and Emma explore the yard. This is a good home, my mother said quietly, her gaze sweeping over the twins as they chased each other through the grass. You've done well, Amanda. Thank you, I replied, accepting the compliment without qualification or doubt. As the sun set on our first day in our new home, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain of that October day when my children had been deemed less worthy than their cousin had transformed into the catalyst for positive change. Sometimes the greatest betrayals lead to the most necessary departures. What had seemed like an ending, the day we packed our bags and left my parents' house, had actually been a beginning. A beginning of self-respect, of true independence, of showing my children what it meant to stand up for yourself and for those you love. Family, I had learned, was not just about blood or obligation. It was about mutual respect, consistent kindness, and the fierce, unwavering choice to value each person for who they truly were. My children and I had created our own family unit, strong and supportive, and we had opened our circle to include those who treated us with the dignity we deserved. As I tucked the twins into bed that night, in their very own rooms in our very own house, I felt a deep, profound sense of peace. We had come through the storm, and found ourselves on solid ground at last. Have you ever had to make a difficult, even heartbreaking, decision to protect your family's well-being? What would you have done in my place? I would absolutely love to hear your stories and your thoughts in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more real-life stories of overcoming family challenges. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pack your bags and create the life you and your children truly deserve. Thank you for listening. Take care.